Hello, hello, hello. Here we are again indeed. Here we go for one more qualifying session for the weekend. The big one. The real qualifying, if you will, after the sprint qualifying yesterday. And the sprint race, in hindsight, there wasn't really much going on, was there? I built it up in my head. I was positive. I thought maybe there'll be some battling, particularly in the midfield, because I thought it would be worthwhile for those midfield guys to go for the additional points, but it unfortunately didn't play out like that, and we saw what was quite a drab sprint race. I think, again, because a lot of the teams realizing they're better off keeping their car in good condition for the full qualifying rather than risking doing something untoward during the sprint itself. Hello, Sarah. Hello, Kelly. Hello, Sally. Hello, Josh. Welcome back. Welcome back. We'll quickly go over here. Just make sure everything is actually live and going and well. Looks okay to me. Generally so. We'll just pop that there and there. And get going. Oh, the chat is not doing its thing. We'll give that a minute. We'll let that load and see what happens. There we go. There's the chat logging itself. Beautiful. So, shall we look at, first and foremost, the repercussions from this earlier sprint race. Don't know what words I was looking for there, but the sprint race earlier on. These are the repercussions from it. Oscar Piastri getting an additional 7 points means that he is now just that one extra point further away from his teammate. 9 points now the gap between Piastri and Norris going into the qualifying and then the Grand Prix tomorrow. Norris gaining 6 points, goes up to 232. Still just the two McLaren guys above the 200 mark. Max Verstappen now almost 3 race victories behind Oscar Piastri, even though he did add 1 extra point to himself over Piastri in top spot. So it does feel like Verstappen is fully out of contention now. You know, it's like, when do we say that he is fully done and dusted? I think a couple of races ago, probably. Now, most definitely. Max Verstappen down in third place, 173 points for him. Pierre didn't start the sprint race, correct. Well, he did, but it was 2 laps too late. He started a couple of laps after everybody else. So, never the best look when you are starting 2 laps behind everyone. And there's only 15 laps of racing, but there we are. George Russell, no points scored in the sprint race, loses a little bit of ground to Max Verstappen in 4th spot there, 147 points so far this season. I think will be more competitive, George Russell, in today's qualifying. Little bit of damage to his car during sprint qualifying yesterday was the excuse. Whether that really had as much impact as he was saying. He said, you know, a lot of the gravel that Kimi Antonelli kicked onto the circuit ended up causing some issues for his floor. Maybe it was just a little bit too much for George Russell with that tiny little bit of damage to the floor underneath the car. And obviously with qualifying being so tight yesterday as well, maybe George Russell just losing out there. Do I think the McLaren should change their downforce? I think they have changed their downforce by the looks of things. Who was it? Rob Marshall? No, he's left Red Bull now. Someone was outside of the McLaren garage for Red Bull when I sort of tuned into the Sky Sports coverage, looking at whether or not the McLaren cars were slightly adapting what they were doing. The problem is they kind of gambled. The issue that we've got, and we saw it in Silverstone as well, is you can gamble on dry or you can gamble on wet. And we saw, you know, the McLarens gamble on wet for Silverstone, and they got it right, and they looked way quicker than Max Verstappen, who gambled on dry. Today, McLaren did the same thing. They gambled on wet. Red Bull slightly more gambled on dry, and it was dry during the sprint race, and therefore Max Verstappen did have that straight line speed advantage, that lower downforce rear wing, And it played into his favour, and that's why he was able to get past Oscar Piastri and then also keep Oscar Piastri behind. So it's that gamble that they've also got to make as well. And we were expecting it to be wetter this weekend than it has been in Belgium. Will it be wet tomorrow? It's looking like more likely wet tomorrow than any other day this weekend at Spa. So that's the gamble they've got to take. I think the McLaren team will take a little bit of the downforce off, though. I think they have to. I think they have to adapt. I think they have to sort of think we're not absolutely guaranteed the victory like maybe they thought they were. And therefore, they're taking it a step down. And Max Verstappen on the Red Bull side of things might see that and sort of go, well, do we go even further? Do we gamble on fully wet and go like super high downforce to try and contradict the McLarens, or do they stick with what they've got? It's a little bit of a tactical battle of rear wings, really, and seeing who goes where in terms of the downforce. We will see once we get into qualifying itself and we can see the top speed of the cars down the straights, but it's going to be tight. Charles Leclerc, Lewis Hamilton down there in 5th and 6th place in the championship. Charles Leclerc, another 5 points on the board. Elongates his lead to his teammate to 21 points. So Hamilton nearly a race victory behind his teammate now, but still within a reasonable distance. He'll kick himself, obviously, for that mistake during sprint qualifying yesterday. Will hopefully not do the same thing again, because I think, you know, we could have seen Lewis Hamilton way higher, but again, wasn't able to get anything done in the sprint race, was probably holding on to his tyres a bit and just sort of using the sprint race to learn, because there was no way he was getting back up into the top 8. And when you're not getting any points for it, you know, basically finishing 9th versus finishing 18th, there was no difference to it. So, yeah, Lewis Hamilton needs to start a lot higher up in terms of qualifying today and then the race tomorrow. Kimi Antonelli, 63 points, now 40 points drift of Lewis Hamilton. And I think that's the thing where we talked about this before, when Ferrari is second in the Constructors now, and Ferrari look kind of set to come second in the Constructors now. The reason I would gamble on Ferrari being able to maintain that, despite the fact that Verstappen has looked really quick and Russell has looked really quick, where Leclerc maybe hasn't, I think it's more so that Ferrari have 2 drivers, and Ferrari have 2 drivers that are consistently in and around the point scoring places more often than not, where Antonelli has fallen away a little bit. Mistake in qualifying yesterday, didn't really look too racy, even though he was trying to make some moves in the sprint earlier on today as well. So I think Antonelli needs to get to the summer break at this point, I feel. There's a few drivers in the mix that I feel like just need the summer break to have a bit of a reset. I know that we've had a couple of weeks before this race weekend from Silverstone, but even so, I think there's a few drivers in there that just needs a proper break. Alex Albon might be one of them, to be fair, down well outside of the points in terms of the sprint. 8th place, still best of the rest. 11 points to Nico Hülkenberg, who also didn't have a very good sprint, but Hülkenberg has been eking away at that, hasn't he? You know, that podium place in Silverstone really did jump him up the standings, and 11 points doesn't feel like an unsurmountable amount now, considering that Stakes Alba has looked way quicker since the Spanish Grand Prix, and Nico Hülkenberg has really started to click with it. Esteban Ocon also getting an extra 4 points, just getting closer to those top 2. Feels weird that Esteban Ocon is in 10th. You know, I think everyone has been very heaping of praise when it's come to Albon and Hülkenberg and Hadjar as well. Kind of forgotten that Ocon is actually in the middle of that pack, and 27 points puts him 5 clear of Isaac Hadjar now. And I feel like we've kind of forgotten about Esteban Ocon a little bit there. Isaac Hadjar in 11th. Lance Stroll, Gasly, Alonso stayed where they are. Sainz gained 3 points, puts himself equal with Fernando Alonso now, but still in 15th spot. Lawson, Sonoda stay where they are as well. And Behrman, despite scoring 2 points in the sprint, also stays in 18th place. So no shuffling in terms of the actual driver positions, but a little bit of change in terms of the points that are at play. And especially Williams will be looking at that as a huge positive. 3 points to them. Haas scoring 6 points also gets them to within a point of Aston Martin. And then Racing Bull's getting 1 point with Isaac Hadjar also closing in on Kick Sauber. The gap between them now 4 points. But that was a quick roundup of how the points have changed now that we've had that sprint race. As I say, no changes to the positions in terms of either championship, but definitely in terms of what's at stake this weekend, and certainly Constructors' Championship positions for those teams towards the back end of the grid. Alpine will be absolutely kicking themselves with Haas scoring 6 points and Pierre Gasly starting inside of the point scoring places and not being able to take part really. That will be a real kicker for them moving forwards. But shall we talk predictions? It is our final opportunity to get the predictions in before we go into the full Grand Prix. Obviously, we've had a little bit of help when it's a sprint weekend. We get a bit of a preview to what full qualifying will look like, although we are on the soft compound tyres for qualifying this time around. And as we talked about a couple of times, oops, wrong screen. As we talked about a couple of times this weekend, we do have a split in the tyres. So the C3 and C4 compounds being used as the medium and soft. So the C4 is effectively a super soft around here in Spa. That could play a little bit of a role. I know that we saw the medium running yesterday in Q1, Q2. Now we get to see the softer running in Q1, Q2. There were a few guys that looked a little bit better on the medium, to be fair. So could slightly swap around who's where in terms of those first couple of qualifying sessions. But then we got to see the soft compound tyre, and let's be honest, Oscar Piastri does just seem to have clicked with that car this weekend. I would be very surprised if Oscar Piastri is not on pole once again. Set a lap record here yesterday in sprint qualifying. Looked pretty swift again in the sprint race as well. The front three completely left the rest of the grid standing still. It was just that top speed advantage that Max Verstappen had was able to keep Oscar Piastri at bay. So feels like the McLarens have got the 1-2 in their sights. Max P3, yeah, I could understand that, Josh. I could see that happening most certainly. McLaren car doesn't have any reliability issues, so no DNF for them unless someone crashes into them. Very true, yeah. No reliability issues so far. Although we have seen that the Mercedes engined cars are starting to have a little bit of reliability issue. I think we talked about this yesterday during one of the, I think it might have been free practice rather than during the sprint qualifying. But we were talking about the fact that, you know, Williams, Mercedes, they've both had quite a few reliability issues that have come down to that Mercedes powertrain. But it's the team's way of looking after them as well, you know. Maybe the reason that it's just Mercedes and Williams is because they're maybe running their engines a little bit higher, a little bit hotter. And actually, the McLaren car, because of the aero that they've got and because of the advantage that they have, they're able to run the engines that little bit lower, keep it just running at a more sustainable level, and therefore the reliability issues have not been as big of a problem for the McLaren cars, even though they are Mercedes powered as well. But it's just my prediction on it. Hello, Juan. How's it going? Mexico is the only time Mercedes have to change things. That's, well, I feel like it's getting towards that part of the year where the teams are going to be starting to think about when they're going to take their penalties, right? It's normally, as you say, Mexico, sometimes Brazil as well. If you're going to take engine penalties, if you're going to take reliability penalties, you're kind of starting to plan out when they are likely to happen and when you need to take them. only Mercs having reliability issues, but their customer team is competing for the championship. Very true. Well, I mean, Williams are also having reliability issues. So it's not just Mercedes. And also, Fernando Alonso hasn't had the best of luck either inside the Aston Martin. So it does feel like the Mercedes-powered cars are starting to come to a little bit of a head with this engine for this year. But the McLarens haven't had it yet. That's the kind of thing we're saying. So will the McLarens run into the same kind of reliability, or have they already thought ahead and actually they're running their engines a little bit cooler and not quite maximizing the way it is? Monza, yes, Josh, great point. Monza, see some penalties there. Usually get some swaps around, don't we? Monza is a good track to take the penalty because you know overtaking opportunities will come towards you. You know everyone is just running the exact same downforce setup as well in Monza. So your car advantage, rather than strategically playing it one way versus another, sort of plays into your favor also. Williams are on the podium. That is optimistic. Unfortunately, we're not going to get the sort of 2021 style rain, I don't think, where the qualifying session is completely and utterly washed out, and therefore we do see, what was it, George Russell second place in terms of qualifying that day. Nicholas Latifi inside of the points as well, I think, off the top of my head. So that was the last time we had a Williams on the podium. I can't imagine we're gonna have that again. Is rain predicted for qualifying? Not at the moment, no. Although it certainly looks a little bit more drab than it did during the sprint earlier on today. There's more so looking like it's going to be rain coming up later on in the weekend and possibly during the Grand Prix, which can then, be another twist in the tail, because how do you set up your car? Do you do what Max Verstappen did earlier on today? Do you set yourself up for a dry race? Do you do what McLaren did earlier today? Do you set yourself up for a wet race? Do you set yourself up for something in between? Or are you just kind of doing nothing if you set yourself up for something in between? It's a real tricky sort of back and forth that you do have. GP is looking more likely to be wet than qualifying. Qualifying, I don't think we will have any kind of rain playing a part, but you never know. You never know. Charles P1. What's my favorite track, which is not on the current grid? Ooh, probably Malaysia, Malaysia. Portimao, I don't mind. Portugal. Yeah, probably Malaysia. Haas will be strong again. Spa suits them. I hope so. Very much hope so. Double point scoring finish during the sprint race earlier on. I feel like Behrman and Ocon have both gone under the radar a little bit in terms of their performances so far this season. And now is an opportunity for them to, get some headlines and actually stand out a little bit amongst the midfield pack and really put their mark on the season so far. Hockenheim or Nürburgring? Ooh, yeah, very good point. There's no German Grand Prix. I feel like more of a Hockenheim guy rather than the Nürburgring, but that's just me. What about McLaren and Red Bull for 2026? 2026 is still completely unpredictable at this point. The problem is the FIA haven't actually determined what they want 2026 to look like yet. So no idea what 2026 is going to be, because they're still adapting the setup, they're still adapting the rules, they're still adapting lots of things, and therefore kind of waiting to see, really. Obviously, you're looking at the aerodynamics team, and you're looking at the big movers and shakers, really. A lot of the teams bringing in personnel and key personnel for 2026, Aston Martin being the one that's kind of grabbed the headlines maybe more than others, because they brought in big names in Adrian Newey. But then you've got Jonathan Wheatley going to stake. You've got Matteo Binotto working behind the scenes at Audi now as well, and working with their power units. He worked with the Ferrari power units for a very long time, did Binotto. He's now working with Audi. So you're more looking behind the scenes for 2026, and who do you trust to adapt their skills that they've already got from previous generations and previous cars to be able to get ahead come 2026, you know? Do you trust Mercedes? They were able to do it. Last time there was a big engine regulation change was when Mercedes started their dominance era that we saw previously. Do you trust Red Bull? Red Bull, in terms of the aerodynamics, got it absolutely spot on in 2022 and 2023. That was what gave them the advantage that they had for such a long time and allowed Max Verstappen to win back-to-back championships that he has done. Do you trust Ferrari to, you know, finally adjust, finally get one thing right? Or to McLaren, you know, McLaren haven't had too many big losses, McLaren, in terms of the key structures behind the scenes. Andrea Stella's still there, Zach Brown's still there, key personnel that they've brought in behind, even the big names that they brought in from Red Bull a few years ago, still there. So maybe you trust. How are McLaren going to improve in the race? It's a flip of a coin for McLaren, isn't it? Oh, thank you, David, for following on Twitch. We are live on Twitch, by the way, if you do prefer Twitch rather than YouTube. I know a lot of people just come over to YouTube for the sake of it because we used to only be live on YouTube. We're now also live on Twitch. So if you do want to join us on Twitch, I know that if you're watching on your phone, it's way easier to watch on Twitch because you can have it on in the background and things like that. Audi have the same mentality as Mercedes. They'll do good. I think, yeah, they've brought in a lot of good people, haven't they? It's the thing, right? You see lots of people exiting Red Bull. You see lots of people exiting Alpine, and they don't give me a lot of hope. Whereas you see lots of people entering Audi. You see lots of people entering Mercedes. You know, maybe. But in terms of McLaren, it's gonna be tough. Do they decide to try and take a little bit of downforce off of that rear wing? Go for a little bit more straight line speed so that if Max Verstappen does get ahead of them come race day, they have a little bit of an advantage there? Or do they trust in the process a little bit? Because I think when it comes to the races, you can trust in the fact that there are going to be pit stops, there are going to be tire changes, there are going to be strategy deviations, and do you kind of stick with your guns a little bit and go, you know what, even though we may have messed up this one and we may not have got the result that we wanted to in the sprint, actually the reason that happened is because we're more so set up for what's going to be happening come Sunday when we have to actually turn it on a little bit and realistically get the results that we're aiming to do, when the points, rather than it being a 1 point differential between first and second, it's a 7 point differential between first and second. And it's like, now it actually matters a lot more for Oscar Piastri to be in first rather than in second place, especially when his teammate would lose out 10 points rather than the 2 they would have been had Oscar Piastri been able to get past Max Verstappen earlier on this afternoon. Like when you're looking at both of the McLaren drivers already on 200 plus points, Oscar Piastri closing in on 250 points for the season. I know it feels like 1 point can make a huge difference, but 1 point when you're risking, you know, a collision with Max Verstappen possibly, or you're risking, you know, doing something a little bit silly against Max Verstappen in that way, I can understand why Oscar Piastri just kind of leant on the side of caution and decided to sit behind Max Verstappen for the most part and just stay where he was. So take the 7 points, move on to the next one. Which driver has the highest chance of switching teams next season? I don't know if we're going to have many changes, to be honest. I feel like the whole silly season of last year, like the ridiculousness of everyone trying to sort out their teams, you know, and getting rid of so many drivers and bringing in so many drivers was more so for 2026. Like Nico Hülkenberg's move was certainly for 2026 and beyond. You're looking at Ollie Behrman kind of getting in because Kevin Magnussen could have stayed another year, but they were like, no, we don't really want Ollie Behrman to be sitting in Formula 2 for another season, so Ferrari would have pushed that, especially after his little debuts. Yuki or Franco, maybe? Yeah, I suppose they're the ones, right? The teams that haven't quite got their setup sorted. Because I feel like McLaren, they're both under really long contracts. Ferrari, both under really long contracts. Mercedes seem to be now leaning towards keeping their driver lineup the same. It's, you know, if Max Verstappen goes to Mercedes, that's then a big can of worms that we have to sort out. But yeah, it's looking unlikely, isn't it, at this point? Looking like Max will stay. So yeah, then it's the seat beside Max. Is it Lawson, Tsunoda, Hadjar? Do you get Lindblad and just chuck him in straight away, akin to what Mercedes have done with Kimi Antonelli? Do you just sort of jump past the sister team and go straight for it? Maybe that's the move. Aston Martin, Fernando Alonso staying for another year? Yes or no? But yeah, it's sort of Red Bull, RB, Alpine, isn't it? Everybody else seems pretty set up and settled. Bring back Ricciardo? Unfortunately not, I don't think. I think Ricciardo's done and dusted. Obviously, Sebastian Vettel also said recently that he's done. Way more chat than Sprint because Sprint was boring. Yeah. I try and find the positives whenever it comes to a Formula One setup, but unfortunately the Sprint race was pretty tough going, wasn't it? How long till quali starts? About 3 minutes. 3 minutes. How long is Lewis's contract at Ferrari? I think it is, yeah, 3 years. We've got. Because that was the reason he didn't want to stay at Mercedes. Mercedes were only offering him a 1+1, I think. Similar to what they're offering George Russell now. Mercedes like to have those shorter contracts, don't they? Even when Hamilton was winning championships and like Valtteri Bottas was doing an incredible job and they were winning constructors championships over and over, they never gave either of those guys very long contracts at all. Mercedes don't really like committing to super long contracts with drivers. I mean, none of the Formula One teams do. I think a lot of the Formula One teams always want to at least have the perception that they've got options, you know, and never sort of absolutely put your stamp on one driver staying for the foreseeable future. Apart from Red Bull did it with Max Verstappen, yes, and Ferrari did it with Charles Leclerc and now a little bit with Lewis Hamilton as well. But most of the teams up and down the grid like to have that adaptability. And that's why you see, like, even Oscar and Lando, they only get kind of 1 year extensions, 2 year extensions, little bits here and there to change up their contracts. They never get huge contract extensions. Sauber, yeah, both Hülkenberg and Gabriel Bortoleto are both contracted for next year. So they won't be swapping around or doing anything crazy. Unless, obviously, you know, Gabriel Bortoleto has like an absolute horror show end to the season or something like that. And they need to swap him. But I doubt that will happen, to be honest. Esteban Ocon there inside of the Haas car. The drivers are lining themselves up in the pit lane. We are about a minute away from the start. Ooh, and Ollie Behrman jumping out of the pits there, and Fernando Alonso saying he nearly crashed into Ollie Behrman as he was coming out of the pits. Interesting. They will have a little look at that. The pit lane is very weird now, isn't it? Because they've introduced that maximum delta time. So no longer do we get the long queues of cars around the final couple of corners. But now we just get long queues of cars waiting in the pit lane, right? So the pit lane is very busy during these qualifying sessions now. Especially around here, because I think a lot of the drivers will want to get out quite early in terms of trying to determine who's going to be where. No sector colours. Oh, I can put the sector colours on. Apologies, I kind of forgot about it. I forgot we do that during qualifying. Let me Find the settings. Close with Fernando. I think everyone just we see like 3 or 4 of those every single session, don't we? Where someone darts in front of the other. But I think it's just because everybody has to try and get themselves into the right kind of position. And because there's such a long queue in the pit lane, you do end up with drivers just sort of tripping over one another all the time. But it is under investigation. We've got Fernando Alonso and Ollie Behrman there. Incident involving cars in the pit lane. But we are now underway. And a lot of the drivers getting themselves set up. Ooh. A change to the front wing there. I think of one of the Stakes Albert cars. What's happened here? I think he just... Hulkenberg... Hulkenberg actually tried to get in front of Lance Stroll in the pit lane. And then Lance Stroll actually just drove over Nico Hulkenberg's front wing. So they had to pull him back, and they have changed the front wing on Nico Hulkenberg's Sauber car. So there you go. If you wanted a crash in the pit lane, you kind of got one there. Lance Stroll just running over the front wing of Nico Hulkenberg's car. Interesting. Of course, Lance Stroll will argue, well, I was already actually lined up in the pit lane, whereas Nico Hulkenberg will say, but yeah, you ran over my front wing. So going to be interesting. I'm sure that one will get investigated as well. Oh, damage to the side pod as well. So it's now affected Lance Stroll's qualifying. So a little bit of tete-a-tete there. Eye for an eye. Lance Stroll's going to have to come back in and maybe have his car checked over so that they can double check it at Aston Martin. Make sure that there's no severe damage. Time to update the Lance Stroll moments video. Yeah, I figured I'd try that. That did not... I don't feel like I'm going to do another one of those. I was sort of planning on doing a few. I was going to do one for like each driver, but I thought I'd start with Lance Stroll, and that one might have a bit more traction because of the, you know, general perception. But nah, wasn't a banger. Carlos Sainz then getting his flying lap underway. See if Pierre Gasly's Alpine car is running at full throttle after having started the sprint race a little bit behind where he would have wanted to. Qualified inside of the points, of course, and then had to start 2 laps behind everybody else come the actual sprint race itself. Now coming around turn 12, keeping an eye on him. Colapinto actually quickest of anybody through the first sector so far, as Alonso comes towards the end of it, and Behrman as well. Still Colapinto, purple in that first sector, and now purple in the second sector as well, Colapinto. Maybe Franco has finally decided he's going to turn up during the 2025 season. 7th race for Alpine now. Remember, he only had 9 races for Williams last year, so he's almost matched the number of races that he had for Williams now with Alpine. It's been nowhere near the positives, though, that we saw from them. And Gasly and Colapinto actually both come into the pits and don't finish those flying laps. Here's Carlos Sainz then to come in. And Carlos Sainz also straight in the pits as well. So nobody deciding to finish any of their flying laps at the minute. Everyone deciding that they are against it. Lando Norris has just gone purple in the middle sector. And there you go. That is after the session that will be investigated. Hulkenberg versus Lance Stroll for that unsafe release. Weird that they categorized it as that. I don't know if Hulkenberg did too... Well, I suppose Hulkenberg was trying to cut the queue a little bit. Having said that, he's now done a 1:14.8 through the middle sector. He's a little bit off Lando Norris's time, as Norris is going to start us off with a 1:42 dead. And Oscar Piastri is going to just about outdo his teammate with a 1:41.9. So Ocon then peels into the pits. So does Nico Hulkenberg. So a lot of these drivers, I suppose, being on used tyres, they're just kind of getting their sights in and then wanting a fresh set of tyres. There's a 10% chance of rain, so we are unlikely, but maybe they're just playing a little bit safe there. What software am I using? This is Multiviewer, which is an add-on to sort of F1 TV. Hello, what do I think about Williams' recent kind of dip in scoring points in recent races? Didn't watch too many of the races due to studies. They've mainly come from reliability problems and the fact that everyone else has brought upgrades, you know. Williams are not really bringing any upgrades for 2025. They've said that they're more so focused on 2026 now, and basically that the 2025 car is what it is. So they started off the season well, but whilst everyone else develops and you stand still, eventually the rest of the pack catches up to you. And it does feel like the Aston Martins have got better. The RBs are getting better. Certainly the Stake Saubers are getting better. And they're just kind of closing the gap on the Williams car. And that's mainly where it's come from. And the lack of points for Williams has just been the fact that they're not really the absolute dominant force in the midfield anymore. They are equally competitive with RB, Aston Martin, Stake Sauber, Alpine sometimes when they turn up, more so Pierre Gasly. Max Verstappen, 0.03 of a second of Piastri's time through the first sector. George Russell has actually gone quickest of anybody through the first sector. He's just coming through the second sector now, 44.3 from George Russell. Expecting him to be in and amongst the top 10 this time around. Leaving a bit more of a gap maybe to Antonelli in front, just in case the gravel does get sprayed across the track once again. But Antonelli just coming around the final corner. It's a 1:42.7 from Kimi Antonelli, and George Russell then follows 1:42.5 from George Russell. Fastest of anybody in the final part of the lap. So it's only that middle sector where George Russell faltered compared to Piastri and Norris ahead. Verstappen also about to come round towards the final couple of corners. Just trying to deal with the Alpine of Pierre Gasly. Gasly trying to give Verstappen enough space. Verstappen coming across the line. Second fastest. And all three of the top drivers within a 1/10 of a second of one another, as Liam Lawson has just gone quickest of anybody through the middle part of the lap. So the RB of Liam Lawson deciding now is the time to turn up. Let's see where Lawson can slot himself in. Gabriel Bortoleto within a second of Oscar Piastri's time, but still the slowest of the drivers so far. Ollie Behrman then goes even quicker still through the middle part of the lap, as Liam Lawson goes quickest of anybody by a couple of tenths of a second. So Lawson 2/10 clear of Oscar Piastri's time on a fresh set of soft compound tyres. Oscar Piastri was on a used set and probably wasn't pushing to the absolute limits. Here comes Ollie Behrman. Can he do even better? Not quite. Goes to third fastest, which then is outdone by Alex Albon. Albon only 0.07 of a second of Liam Lawson. Here comes Carlos Sainz to go quickest of anybody so far. So the lap times are starting to tumble. And it's a little bit like yesterday where the later you seem to go in the session, the lap times do start to come towards you. Carlos Sainz, Liam Lawson and Alex Albon showing that now our top 3 in this session. Charles Leclerc also going quick in the middle part of the lap, is up on Carlos Sainz's time through the middle sector. Here comes Charles Leclerc then. George Russell and Kimi Antonelli, for those Mercedes fans, just making their way into the pits. They will likely need to go again. Russell 11th fastest, Antonelli 13th at the moment. But watching Pierre Gasly coming around the final couple of corners. Charles Leclerc, here comes Leclerc. Gasly only goes 8th fastest in his Alpine, but Leclerc is looking quick, and Leclerc does go to the top of the standings. He was ahead of Carlos Sainz through the middle part of the lap, maintained it through the final part as well, and Charles Leclerc a 141.6, good enough for top spot at the moment. Lewis Hamilton quicker than his teammate through the first part of the lap though. Can Hamilton match Charles Leclerc? Not quite. Hamilton 6th fastest, lost a couple of tenths or so during that final sector. Did Lewis Hamilton. And new tyres on Lewis Hamilton's car as well. I want redemption for Gasly. Yeah, it would be nice to see Gasly maybe get some points this weekend, considering he was a little bit robbed when it came to the sprint race earlier on today. Lando Norris going once again, I think this time on a fresh set of tyres. Piastri also on a fresh set of softs, just coming through the final sector. I think you just need to make sure that you get that lap time in just at the right time. Lap times getting rubbered in. Exactly, yeah. The lap times are starting to tumble, and I think everybody is starting to use fresh soft compound tyres as well. Also, you know, you've got the traffic. Do you get a nice little slipstream up towards turn 5? Do you get a nice little slipstream through the final part of the lap to turn 18? That can also play a factor if you just get the right kind of traffic at the right time. Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri going pretty early, it has to be said here, for the McLarens. They've got confidence that they'll be able to make it through. Of course, we are just looking for the bottom 5 drivers. At the moment, that is Franco Colapinto, George Russell, Lance Stroll, Kimi Antonelli, and Gabriel Bortoleto. So they are the 5 drivers that need to improve the most. But it does feel like pretty much all of the drivers need to find some time if they are going to make it look comfortable. Lando Norris coming around the final couple of corners, comes across the line, and Lando Norris, a 1:41.0 from him is more than good enough to go to the top of the timing sheets for now. Quickest in the final sector and the second sector as well, although Piastri has just gone quicker in the middle part of the lap. A little bit of a sloppy first sector from Oscar Piastri, though. Didn't improve on his previous first sector time. Oh my goodness. Oscar Piastri, a couple attempts off of his teammate, goes second fastest with a 1:41.2. There's a lot of cars still to come as the pit lane is already getting busy. Here we are then, Verstappen making his way down towards turn 5. Antonelli and Russell out there as well. Stroll, Alonso, Lawson just making his way out of the pit lane. Gabriel Bortoleto trying to do the same as well. Trying to also give himself a bit of breathing room to the other RB behind. So Lawson, Bortoleto, Hadjar, they're the kind of drivers that we expect to kind of get through to Q3, but there's always that pressure on them to deliver such a tense midfield battle that we have this year. Just the tiniest mistake along the longest lap on the calendar. Nearly a 2-minute lap. 1 minute 40 seconds plus. Means you have to be absolutely perfect for just over 100 seconds. Which doesn't sound like much, but when you're on the absolute limit of the fastest cars on the planet, it is a task ahead of you. And Lando Norris just coming into the pits now. Or is he going to go around again? Ooh. Lando Norris, I think, is coming into the pits, but can't quite make it out. No, maybe not. Lando Norris going again, possibly. Kimi Antonelli also going for another flying lap. Russell and Piastri very close to one another through the final sector. Piastri maybe wanting a little bit of a tow up towards the turn 5. Or Piastri going again. No, Piastri, yeah, looking like they want to go again. Antonelli, a couple attempts down on Fernando Alonso's time. So Norris and Piastri going again. But Norris waiting and going slowly at the moment. Piastri the same. Colapinto also going slowly between the two. Needs to improve, does Franco. And the lap times are going to start to come towards us. Bortoleto, Hadjas, and Oda, Behrman, Hulkenberg, the guys that we've kind of got our eyes on in this first qualifying session, starting to make their way past the start-finish line for their final flying laps of the session. George Russell has just gone quickest of anybody through the first part of the lap as well. George Russell needing to improve. He's only 3.5 tenths up on Fernando Alonso's lap time through the middle part of the lap. We know how competitive the midfield is right now. We assume that Fernando Alonso is going to be able to find a little bit of time. Lance Stroll also just a tiny fraction of a second up on his teammate. Here comes Kimi Antonelli. It's 11th fastest for the Italian at the moment. Can George Russell go better than his teammate? Yes, goes 8th fastest as George Russell for now. Here comes Lance Stroll. Can he get himself out of that bottom 5? No. Lance Stroll is going to be out of qualifying. Only 18th is for him. Fernando Alonso doesn't improve in the way that we thought he would. Alonso is going to start in that bottom 5. He's 16th now and will be out of qualifying. Here comes Gabriel Bortoleto trying to improve, currently in 20th spot and looking for more pace inside of that Stake Sauber car. Around the final couple of corners he comes, and it's 10th fastest for Gabriel Bortoleto. The Brazilian fans will be very pleased with that, looking like he's going to be through as long as things play out in his favour. Here comes Ollie Behrman, who is 10th fastest at the moment in Haas. Comes across the start-finish line. Where's Behrman going to slot himself into? It's 5th fastest from Ollie Behrman, as he's the first driver to take the checkered flag. And that means Kimi Antonelli is going to drop out, as Nico Hulkenberg now improves and goes 12th fastest. Gasly and Hamilton also right down there, but Gasly currently fastest of anybody through the first sector is Pierre. Again, the Frenchman just absolutely dragging that Alpine to lap time that it doesn't really deserve. Esteban Ocon has just gone 13th fastest of anybody. That puts Lewis Hamilton right on the bubble. Here comes Pierre Gasly then. Can Gasly improve on his lap time? Is better in the first and second sectors from the Frenchman. This could be a lot of pressure on Lewis Hamilton to improve. Hamilton is improving through the middle part of the lap, though. And Gasly is going to go 11th fastest to put Hamilton down into that bottom 5. So Gabriel Bortoleto, things haven't quite gone in his favour. He's in 15th spot right now. Lewis Hamilton improved through the middle part of the lap, was slower than previous in the first sector, though. Can Hamilton get himself through here? Yes, he goes 7th fastest. That puts Gabriel Bortoleto down into the bottom 5. And Bortoleto is going to be out of qualifying. Franco Colapinto then, the final driver in that bottom 5 still to come across the start-finish line. Can he improve enough? No, goes 17th fastest and out of qualifying. So Bortoleto, Colapinto and Antonelli join Alonso and Stroll in that bottom 5. Bortoleto so close there. It is hundredths of a second, but that is how tight it is. You know, a 10th of a second for Gabriel Bortoleto, and he jumps all the way up ahead of Yuki Tsunoda in that standing. So it is very, very close in these early stages of qualifying. But there we are. Gabriel Bortoleto, 16 fastest. Franco Colapinto, 17 fastest. Antonelli, another Antonelli weekend to forget. And this is what I mean when I said Kimi Antonelli just feels like he needs the summer break at this point. It's been a rough last few races for Kimi Antonelli. The first quarter of the season seemed perfect. Came to Miami, got that sprint pole. It was looking rosy if you're a Kimi Antonelli fan. Has slowly started to dwindle away from that, hasn't it? Kimi Antonelli, unfortunately, having another weekend to forget. Oh, Hamilton down in 16th. Hamilton lap time deleted. Track limits, turn 4. Hamilton's lap time has been deleted, and Gabriel Bortoleto fans rejoice. Gabriel Bortoleto up into 15th spot. He will be through, and Lewis Hamilton out once again. So that is 2 Q1 eliminations for Lewis Hamilton's in as many days. Wow. So the lap time has indeed been deleted for Lewis Hamilton. He will start the race in 16th spot. I want to see a replay of this. Let's see if we can find the onboard of Lewis Hamilton's turn 4. How close is it? He got 2 track limits violations. But yeah, track limits violation, lap 8 at turn 4 at 4:17. So 2 track limits violations for Hamilton. That lap 7 one would have been on a warm-up lap, so it won't have mattered. But that one there, lap 8, that is a big violation for Lewis Hamilton and a damning sight for Ferrari fans. Another Lewis Hamilton Q1 exit. Dear, dear, dear. Let's have a look at it then. Here we go, here we go. Yeah, did the same thing that Oscar Piastri did yesterday, if you remember, at the top of the hill, and both tyres do cross the white line. So both tyres are off the track, and that is a lap time deleted. Lewis Hamilton, qualification completed for him. 16th place tomorrow it will be. Wow, that is not what you want to see if you're a Lewis Hamilton fan. And adding to the list of drivers that I feel like just need the summer break at this point, Lewis Hamilton is most certainly one of them. He has had more than enough bad luck inside of that Ferrari car. And Hamilton is indeed out once again. Just, it wasn't much either. It's the tiniest little bit, but it's just a touch greedy from Lewis Hamilton, you could say, you know? Just a tiny little bit. It is pretty tough to take if you're a Lewis Hamilton fan, but can't do much, really. Right. Let's set ourselves up for Q2 then. We have got 5 more drivers that we are going to lose from qualifying here today. Gasly, Tsunoda, Hülkenberg, Ocon, Bortoleto, the drivers that will need to improve the most come the second part of qualifying. Lando Norris was quickest from Piastri, and I think that's the first time this weekend that Lando Norris has gotten the better of Oscar Piastri in this way. So Oscar Piastri with a little bit more to do. The rain clouds, again, doesn't feel like they're going to come, but it is certainly a little bit darker than it was earlier on today in Spa. And Lewis Hamilton finds out over the radio, lap time deleted. And yeah, I think, is everything okay from Lewis Hamilton? Kind of pointed towards him not quite being certain that that was going to play in his favour. Lewis Hamilton still in the car, though, at Ferrari, interestingly, but I'm sure we'll jump out fairly soon as Q2 is now underway. The green light at the end of the pit lane, but similar to what we saw yesterday, looking like a lot of the drivers are going to sit and wait, bide their time a touch, and go out at the optimal position on track. 80% chance of rain tomorrow? Exactly. And that's the fine margins of it, isn't it? Do you set yourself up for a rainy race and gamble on that being the case, and therefore lose out a little bit in terms of qualifying? You know, you got to set yourself up with a bit more downforce. You're going to lose out in particularly the first sector, up the hill and down towards turn 5. Or do you gamble on there not being rain, like Max Verstappen did perfectly for the sprint race earlier on today? Set yourself up with that skinnier rear wing and get yourself a top speed advantage over the rest of the field. It's going to be a bit of a tactical play, alongside the fact that we know the tyres are going to be a little bit strange. They're adapting to this year. Oh, thank you for the new subscriptions to the channel as well. Thank you guys for subscribing. You can subscribe, it's completely for free. Or you can follow us over on Twitch as well. We're growing over on Twitch too. But Lewis Hamilton is indeed out of the session. And now we get going once again. What happened to Hamilton? A lap time deleted and a 16th place start destined for him tomorrow. Colapinto, Antonelli, Alonso and Stroll also out. Let's see then. 13 minutes on the clock. Still waiting for some flying laps to begin. Max Verstappen is at least at the front of the queue on the warm-up laps. Esteban Ocon behind him. Tsunoda, Russell, Sainz, Piastri, Norris, Albon and Lawson also out on track as it stands at the moment. Hello, Twitch. Sainz is getting shown up by Albon. That means managed to get some points earlier on today, did Carlos Sainz. But yes, generally speaking, Alex Albon has had the much better start to the year. Feels a bit harsh on Sainz, though, because Sainz sort of felt like he was really starting to get into a rhythm going into sort of Imola. And then Williams literally said, yeah, that's it for the 2025 car, we're done. And obviously, just as Sainz was getting to grips with the car, we also then had big upgrades from Stake. We had a big upgrade from RB, had a big upgrade from Aston Martin. And it's like, that's kind of detracted from how good the Williams car is, because the Williams car hasn't had a big upgrade. Everyone else around them has had a big upgrade. So here we go. Max Verstappen coming up the hill. What happens? Yeah, they just delete the time effectively. So Lewis Hamilton's lap time where he crossed the track limits, that lap time gets deleted. He still has the previous lap time that he set, But that previous lap time that he set was only good enough to be 16th fastest of the time set within the 18 minutes of the session. Hoping Yuki in the points. Yuki is at least through, so it's always a positive when it comes to qualifying. Been a couple of times where he hasn't quite been able to get that Red Bull into the position you argue it should be. Esteban Ocon has just gone quickest in the middle part of the lap. Sorry, in the first part of the lap. So quicker than Verstappen. Verstappen is the first flying lap driver that we've got. Verstappen comes through the middle sector. He's quicker than Ocon this time. So it's Verstappen versus Ocon as to who's going to be top spot to begin with. Tsunoda then following on behind. But starting to find a little bit of traffic now as Max Verstappen has to get past Charles Leclerc before coming into the bus stop chicane and across the start-finish line to set the standard at a 140.9 for Verstappen on a fresh set of tyres. Esteban Ocon can only do a 141.6, so 7/10 off the pace. Esteban Ocon at the moment. Here comes Yuki Tsunoda to go second fastest, only 3/10 off his teammate, which is much, much better from Yuki Tsunoda. Not where we normally see Yuki Tsunoda at all. George Russell can't go quicker than Tsunoda now. Goes for a 141.3, so 4.5 adrift of Verstappen's fastest time. But Lando Norris has just gone quickest of anybody through the middle part of the lap. And Oscar Piastri has just gone quickest of anybody so far. Piastri goes to a 140.6. Lando Norris, though, quicker through the middle of the section. Oh, and Norris couldn't quite do it. Just slots in less than 1/10 of a second between the two McLaren drivers. Hamilton now watching on. Hamilton out because of the lap time deletion. Charles Leclerc also not looking insanely quick at the moment, but should improve as the lap times come towards the drivers and the track rubbers in even more so than it did during Q1. But yeah, Yuki Tsunoda actually within touching distance of his teammate is something that we haven't seen a lot since he's joined the Red Bull setup. Charles Leclerc then splits the two Red Bull powered cars. Third and fifth now, Verstappen and Tsunoda. Isaac Hadjar also gets himself up into the top 10. Puts Liam Lawson right on the bubble, although Nico Hülkenberg can't quite do better than Lawson for now. So it's Hülkenberg, Bortoleto, Gasly and Sainz, the drivers that need to improve. And Ollie Behrman made a mistake and just went a little bit wide. Ooh, very wide from Ollie Behrman. And that's why Behrman didn't set that lap time, decided to pop into the pits instead. Lost way more than a second and also went off the track. So that lap time would have been deleted from Ollie Behrman anyway. And he is 15th. Piastri and Norris then 1/10 of a second between them. Verstappen, Leclerc, Tsunoda, third, fourth, fifth at the moment. Russell good enough for sixth. The kind of drivers we expect to be up there. Tsunoda finally in the mix with the drivers that he should be more often than not. Albon, best of the rest, in 7th place. Hadjar, Ocon, Lawson, the drivers currently in the point scoring places and good enough to get themselves through into Q3. Hülkenberg, Bortoleto, Gasly, Sainz and Behrman, the 5 drivers that are desperate to improve if they're going to make their way through to the final knockout round of qualifying. Hamilton, Colapinto, Antonelli, Alonso and Stroll already out of qualifying and not taking part in the session at the moment. If I could be so kind as to ask if you could hit that like button, if you're watching on YouTube, maybe even the subscribe button, or if you're watching on Twitch, hit that follow button. That'd be absolutely amazing. Costs you absolutely nothing, but really does help out the channel and supports me to no end. Norris looks a bit more comfortable with this setup. That's very true. Yeah, it does feel like Norris has found a little bit of pace, particularly in the sort of final sector. And Charles Leclerc on the radio. Don't think there's much more than this lap. That was a really good lap, says Charles Leclerc, and the Ferrari engineers agree. So Charles Leclerc saying that he has found the limit of that Ferrari car, in his opinion. And it's still 4.5 tenths shy of Oscar Piastri's current qualifying lap time. The teams are going to reset, though. They're going to wait a couple of minutes now and try and get even more out of their cars, if possible, in the last 4 or 5 minutes that we have got in this second part of qualifying. Doesn't look like there's any clouds that cause any issues. Very much looking like the rain will come tomorrow, though. So, do you gamble? Set your car up that little bit more downforce just in case the rain comes. It seems like Verstappen has certainly added a little bit of downforce to that Red Bull car. Feels like he's going a lot quicker through that middle part of the lap. And a little bit slower through the first part of it. So certainly Verstappen has taken to the idea that it's likely to rain tomorrow, which he didn't earlier on, was running a very skinny rear wing earlier on during the sprint. Thank you, Blue Delta, for following over on Twitch. Appreciate that. Quali likely to stay dry? Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Why was Hamilton's lap time deleted? He went wide, or not even wide, just went across turn 4 at track limits. So, crossed both white lines with both tyres, and that is it. Esteban Ocon having to move out of the way of Alex Albon there. Again, the queue in the pit lane starting to play a factor for some of these drivers as they slot in. Gasly is going to be first across the start-finish line. Hadjar, Hulkenberg, Bortoleto already out there as well. Lando Norris, interestingly, out way before his teammate. Russell and Sainz and Lawson are ahead in the queue of Oscar Piastri. So Piastri is going to be quite far adrift of his teammate. And Piastri actually on the radio asking about just that. Oops. A lot of people need bigger mirrors, is Oscar Piastri's take. Not sure that anyone's going to get punished for it. It's just one of those things, right? If you are one of those cars that did worse last year, so you're further down the pit lane, you just sort of have that ability to get your elbows out and push yourself in. So both of the Stake Sauber cars doing exactly that and pushing themselves in ahead of Lando Norris, and then Lawson also getting ahead of Piastri. But here we are then. Gasly coming around the final corner to start his final flying lap. And Max Verstappen has decided to sit in the garage. He does only have one set of soft compound tyres left, so therefore deciding it's not worth his time. He thinks that the 140.9 will be more than good enough to get himself through. And kind of makes sense. Pierre Gasly, though, looking to get himself and his Alpine through once again, was in Q3 for the sprint race yesterday. Then had the tragedy of having to start from the pit lane. Well, I say start 2 laps down from the pit lane. Gasly looking to improve that lap time. Is going to be the first man across the start-finish line for these flying laps. We then also have to keep an eye, though, on Hülkenberg, Bortoleto, Sainz and Behrman. They are the 5 drivers that need to improve. Otherwise, they will be stuck and out of qualifying in those 5 places below. Let's see what they've got. Just keeping an eye on Pierre Gasly. Gasly's just coming around towards the final couple of corners. Has improved on his first sector and second sector time, but I just want to see what the standard is from Gasly to get out of that bottom 5. Gasly 9th fastest, a 141.6. I think he's going to need a little bit more. Isaac Hadjar takes the checkered flag and comes across the line 6th fastest of anyone so far. Hülkenberg, not good enough. Bortoleto, though, is indeed through. Gabriel Bortoleto with a 7th fastest lap time. Well, I say through. Everybody behind him could improve. Gasly, though, can't. Hülkenberg is going to be out. Gabriel Bortoleto, given that lifeline by Lewis Hamilton, has taken massive advantage of it. Looking like a Q3 performance from Gabriel Bortoleto once again. Here comes George Russell then. Goes 6th fastest in the Mercedes car, even without improving in the second or third sectors. Here comes Carlos Sainz. Can he get himself and the Williams through? Absolutely not. He stays 14th fastest. Liam Lawson is coming around, goes 8th fastest as Liam Lawson to put both of the RBs through and put Pierre Gasly down into that bottom 5. Here comes Esteban Ocon then. The 2 Hasses have looked pretty good. Gabriel Bortoleto and Alex Albon, the drivers on the bubble. Ollie Behrman is not improving through the first sector, but Ocon has just gone purple of anybody through it. Here comes Esteban Ocon then. Round the final couple of corners. Has to deal with Charles Leclerc's Ferrari on the inside. Does it well. Here we go. Final couple of corners for Esteban Ocon. Can he drag that Haas into Q3 once again? No, he can't. He's missed out by 0.02 of a second. And here comes Ollie Behrman, his teammate, who also slots in just behind him. So both of the Haas's, after double point scoring places earlier on today, has to settle with 11th and 12th. Pierre Gasly will start in 13th, Nico Hülkenberg 14th, and Carlos Sainz in 15th place. So it is Hadjar, Lawson, Bortoleto and Albon, the 4 midfield drivers that have made their way through after Hamilton and Antonelli opened the door. Oh, and it's straight away. That's so frustrating for Ollie Behrman. He literally messed up turn 1. And then the whole time, it's so frustrating. I don't know if you've ever done this on like the F1 game or whenever you're playing something, but whenever you do mess up that first corner, you're then almost trying too hard to make up for it in the rest of the lap. And I feel like that's what's happened to Ollie Behrman there. He's just tried and tried and tried to like gain that position and gain that time back. But when you're doing that, especially in qualifying where you have to just be in this flow state, hasn't been able to do it. And Ollie Behrman slotting in just behind his teammate. Lando is the GOAT followed us on Twitch as well. Appreciate that, lad. And Piastri then went through quickest of anybody. Norris then has to slot in just behind him. So they've swapped positions during Q1 and Q2. Norris was quickest in Q1, Piastri quickest in Q2. I think Max Verstappen still has some time in the tank, though. Decided against going out once again, did Max Verstappen. Charles Leclerc feels like that's the absolute maximum performance of the Ferrari, so unlikely that he'll be in the mix for pole position in Q3, but you never know. You never know. And then, yeah, Yuki Tsunoda, the stunning performance from Yuki. Really well done. Has to be said for the Japanese driver. Maybe this is the weekend where it finally clicks and he finds a setup inside of that Red Bull car where he can actually find a little bit of pace. He was still 0.3 of a second slower than his teammate, but That's better than Russell and Hadjar and Lawson behind. At least he's quicker than the RBs. I think that's the thing for Tsunoda, isn't it? A lot of the time this season, we've seen him behind Hadjar or behind Lawson in the second team. And that's where we've kind of gone, ugh, what do we actually need to do here to make sure that you're not starting behind the sister team? Because it's just a bit embarrassing. Which of the McLaren drivers do I support? Kind of both. I'm just a McLaren. I more support the McLaren team. So whoever's driving for McLaren, I try and get behind as much as I possibly can. I was actually a Jenson Button fan, if you must know, which is proper like glory hunter stuff, isn't it? But it wasn't. It was because I was a child and because his initials are the same as mine. Like, that's how simple it was. How simple the world is when you're like 8 years old or whatever I was. I was like, Jenson Button, he has JB as his initials. I have JB as my initials. And Hulkenberg not very happy at all inside of that Stakes Albert car. So Ollie Behrman has found himself out. So is Ocon. And he wasn't very happy at all. And that was where he was trying to set up for his final flying lap, Ollie Behrman, and one of the Red Bull cars actually overtook him. Yeah, Behrman not having a fun time at all. Yeah, gets a really bad run down towards turn one and then also messes up turn one, does Ollie Behrman. I think that just put him off, you know? I think the Red Bull coming up the inside of Ollie Behrman at turn 18 as he was getting himself set up for his lap, I think just put his mind completely out of it. Because Behrman then also messes up turn one and runs wide. So that was his qualifying over. And yeah, Behrman not very happy at all. Lost 0.3 there in his opinion. That would have been more than enough to get him through. And I think rightfully a little bit frustrated is Ollie Behrman. And here we are then. The final part of qualifying. Who will it be? Piastri? Norris? Do you have maybe even some money on Verstappen? Unlikely to be Leclerc, in his own words. Tsunoda's there as well. Russell up in the top 6. And then, how do we feel about the cars behind? Will the RBs continue this little dominance that they had in Q2? Will Gabriel Bortoleto be able to get his second point scoring position in the bag tomorrow? He'll at least be starting inside the points wherever he qualifies today. And Alex Albon back to where we've expected him to be throughout the season so far, really. Albon in 10th in terms of that qualifying session, but more to come from the Williams driver. Ocon, Behrman, Gasly, Hulkenberg and Sainz, the 5 drivers that we lost during Q2 there. Hamilton, Colapinto, Antonelli, Alonso and Stroll also out of qualifying in Q1. Yuki Pole, I mean, it's a stretch. It's a stretch, but I love your optimism. I love your optimism. Sauber Pole, even more optimistic. Love that. Why is there a yellow flag? It's not a yellow flag. That is the final sector. Please sing the Max Verstappen song. I'm in no form a Max Verstappen fan. Behrman has little teeth. It annoys me. Has little teeth. I don't think I've ever noticed that. What a niche thing to bring up, but I'll certainly have a look for it if he does indeed have little teeth. Do I prefer Lawson or Hadjar? What, if I was like making my own team? On form at the minute, it's got to be Hadjar, right? I like Lawson as a person, though. I think Lawson's a very nice guy. All of the interviews that Lawson's had. Problem is, he's just very, very crashy inside of the car. He's quite tenacious, is Liam Lawson. He loves a scrap. Anyhow, let's get into Q3, shall we? 2 flying laps from each of the drivers likely to come. Russell now running around. Verstappen and Tsunoda on used tyres. Hadjar, Lawson, Bortoleto and Albon also on used tyres. So Piastri and Norris have 2 sets of softs. Charles Leclerc has 2 sets of softs, and Russell has 2 sets of softs to run with. Everybody else, the reason they're on used tyres to begin with is because they have a certain number of soft compound tyres allocated to them for the weekend, and they have used all of those tyres bar 1 set. And you want to really hold on to that final set for your final flying lap. So keep an eye on Verstappen, Tsunoda, and the midfield guys, because their lap times will improve substantially when they get a soft, fresh set of soft compound tyres on at the end of the session. They will still give us an idea of where they sit relative to one another, as George Russell is going to start the first flying lap of the final session then. Max Verstappen coming around towards turn 1, 2. It's going to be Russell, Verstappen, Leclerc, Tsunoda, our front 4. Piastri and Norris just behind. And then the midfield maestros, Lawson, Hadjar, Bortoleto and Albon, they're going to be down towards the back end, you would imagine, of this top 10. But also, they're going to be the last 4 across the start-finish line. Here comes Piastri to start his first flying lap of the session. Lando Norris's teammate just behind. So Max Verstappen, a 30.0 through the first part of the lap, is slower than George Russell through the first sector. So Russell has the advantage over Verstappen and Leclerc so far. Here comes Yuki Tsunoda. Can anyone go quicker than Russell through that first part of the lap? Tsunoda certainly can't. Here comes Oscar Piastri as well. Keep an eye on Verstappen's just about to finish the second sector behind George Russell. So Russell comes through the second sector. Nobody anywhere near as quick as Russell through the first part of the lap, though. Russell, a massive advantage through the first sector, then loses all of that through the second sector. Verstappen, 7/10 of a quickened, 7/10 of a second quicker through the middle part of the lap. So George Russell losing out substantially to Verstappen there, and Verstappen also on a scrubbed set of tyres as well. Charles Leclerc comes through, can't beat Verstappen through the middle sector, neither can Tsunoda. Here comes Russell then across the start-finish line, a 141.5 from George Russell. That's going to be beaten pretty handedly by Verstappen, who goes for a 141.0. Here comes Charles Leclerc. Leclerc not quicker than anybody through the middle part of the lap or the first part, but does get quicker than Russell overall, a 141.3. Yuki Tsunoda is going to be next across the start-finish line. Tsunoda only 4th fastest of anybody so far. Lando Norris has gone quickest of anybody through the middle part of the lap. Here comes Oscar Piastri to go quickest by 0.3 of a second to Max Verstappen. But Lando Norris is around the corner, and Norris is going to find another couple of tenths. Norris finds 0.2 on his teammate, and it's a 140.5 from Lando Norris to get proceedings underway. Lawson is slower than Tsunoda. Hadjar then slower than his teammate by 0.5 of a second. Here comes Gabriel Bortoleto, who can't improve on Hadjar or Lawson's time. Ooh, and Gabriel Bortoleto is actually going to lose that time anyway for exceeding track limits, and Albon splits the 2 RB drivers. And Max Verstappen saying on the radio he just didn't quite have the grip that he required. Used tyres, though, on the Red Bull of Max Verstappen, so understandably there's a few tenths there to find. Here's 0.5 second, though, off Lando Norris's current best time. So it is Norris, Piastri, Verstappen, our top 3, as it was earlier on in the sprint, just in reverse order. Norris now leading, Verstappen at the back of that trio. Charles Leclerc fourth, as he seems to find himself always this weekend. And Russell and Tsunoda joining them in the top 6. Of course, we're missing Antonelli and Hamilton from the sort of big 4 teams, you could say, in that top spot. Hamilton and Antonelli both taken out in the first section of qualifying. Hamilton fell foul of a lap time deletion, dropped out in 16th, and Kimi Antonelli, couple of mistakes again from the Italian, meaning 18th was the best that he could do. But that has opened the door to some midfield cars joining them. Tsunoda, 6th fastest, is just ahead of the man he replaced, Liam Lawson, in 7th, Alex Albon in 8th, Isaac Hadjar in 9th, and Gabriel Bortoleto in 10th. Norris will crash. Jesus. Yeah, a lot of negatives here around Lando Norris right now in the chat. Don't think he's done anything that egregious right now. He's just put in a lap time that's a couple of times quicker than his teammate. That's what he's paid to do. Lando and Oscar, though. It's going to go all the way to the end, isn't it? Lando versus Oscar. The final showdown is just a couple of minutes away. We're going to have all of the cars back into the pits. And there was the mistake from Gabriel Bortoleto. Just down towards turn 10. Oof. And yeah, just gets a little bit wide. Trying to carry as much speed as possible through 10 into 11 and just got slightly out of shape there, Gabriel Bortoleto. George Russell on the radio. Looks like everybody went slower, and George Russell asking why he went slower than he did before, but everybody did, so... Norris, Piastri, Verstappen, all running their way out. The cars making their way. Verstappen wants to get out there first. Interesting tactic from Max Verstappen. He wants absolutely no traffic in front of him, just to run into clean air. Hadjar is out as well. Norris has come out before Piastri. So Piastri will come across the start-finish line after Norris this time around. And Norris has the advantage at the moment. Charles Leclerc is actually between the two McLaren cars as well. So Charles Leclerc is going to slot in. Verstappen, Hadjar, Norris, Leclerc are our drivers in that order. Piastri is next up out of the pits. Then Russell, then Bortoleto, then Lawson. And Yuki Tsunoda and Albon leaving it as late as possible. Verstappen just making his way around turn 9 now, as his teammate Yuki Tsunoda is only just making it to the end of the pit lane. This is it then. One final flying lap for the grid for tomorrow. The top 10 is about to be set. At the moment, it stands as Norris, Piastri, Verstappen, Leclerc, Russell, Tsunoda, Lawson, Albon, Hadjar, Bortoleto, in that order from 1 through to 10. Who will be able to improve? Who is going to fall foul of their rivals? Of course, we lost Ocon, Behrman, Gasly, Hulkenberg, and Sainz in Q2. They'll start 11th through 15th. Hamilton will start in 16th place. Colapinto, Antonelli on the penultimate row of the grid, and it is a double back of the grid lockout for Aston Martin. Alonso 19th, Lance Stroll 20th place. Here we are then. All 10 cars are out on track. George Russell and Gabriel Bortoleto are very close to one another. I think Bortoleto trying to maybe even get ahead of the Mercedes car there. As Max Verstappen is going to start his final flying lap. Winner of the sprint race earlier on today, Max Verstappen. They've adapted the Red Bull car. They've added a little bit more downforce, knowing that the rain is likely to come tomorrow. But can he start from pole position here in Belgium? Managed second place in yesterday's qualifying. Lando Norris, though, trying to start from pole position as well. He started his flying lap. So is Charles Leclerc behind. Oscar Piastri coming through the bus stop. Max Verstappen has actually dropped a tenth or two on himself and is pretty slow through the first sector. So looking unlikely that Max Verstappen will be able to cause any real headaches for the two McLaren cars ahead in terms of qualifying today. He'll certainly be there in the race tomorrow, though. Lando Norris has also gone slower through the first sector as well. Charles Leclerc has gone quickest of anybody through the first part of the lap. Maybe the Ferrari of Charles Leclerc isn't quite as slow as the Monegasque man thought it was. He's just gone quickest of anybody so far. Oscar Piastri also hasn't gone quicker than Leclerc, but Oscar Piastri's had the best first sector of the top three. It's a personal best for Oscar Piastri through the middle part of the lap. Verstappen does improve through the middle part of the lap, but is still down on Lando Norris's time. Lando Norris has done much better through the middle part of the lap. Actually puts in a purple middle part of the lap. Here comes Charles Leclerc, is now a couple attempts adrift. Here comes Max Verstappen, stays where he is. It's a 140.9 from Verstappen. Improves, but does not improve on his position. Isaac Hadjar, though, goes fourth fastest of anybody. Isaac Hadjar with a flying lap. Here comes Lando Norris, does not improve. Norris stays at a 140.5 as his best lap time. Here comes Charles Leclerc then, goes third fastest. Leclerc displaces Max Verstappen, so Charles Leclerc is going to start ahead of the Red Bull tomorrow. Here comes Oscar Piastri. He's improved through the first and second sector, but none of it's been purple and none of it's good enough. He misses out by just a tenth of a second to his teammate. Here comes George Russell. Can Russell do any better? He's better in the first and final sectors as George Russell, but it's the middle part of the lap, and that makes me think that the Mercedes car has run a slightly lower downforce rear wing. Maybe gambling on the rain not coming tomorrow, but Lando Norris is able to hold on to pole position here in Belgium despite not improving his lap time. Oscar Piastri stays in second. He was just a tenth of a second off of his teammate. Charles Leclerc did improve after all of that, managed to jump up to third place from fourth. Max Verstappen will be looking at the rear wing of that Ferrari car, 0.003 of a second quicker than him going into tomorrow's Grand Prix. Albon starts in fifth place, which is a stunning lap from the Williams man to break into that top six. George Russell and Yuki Tsunoda will start behind in 6th and 7th. The RBs side by side. Isaac Hadjar just getting the better of his teammate by 0.02 of a second. So incredibly competitive between the two RB drivers. And Gabriel Bortoleto, unfortunately, the slowest of the bunch. Just didn't really get a lap together there, Gabriel Bortoleto, but starts in 10th nonetheless. And his second opportunity to score points is up for grabs. Standout there for me, Alex Albon. Stunning from the Williams man after a very disappointing sprint qualifying and sprint earlier on today. Absolutely flew around Spa. Maybe Williams just adjusting that car to Albon's requirements and getting the job done. But having said that, we have completed the job here as well. Qualifying is completed. Thank you guys so much for watching. Massively appreciate it. This is our starting grid for tomorrow. Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri will start side by side. Championship rivals, teammates, and now our front row of the grid. Charles Leclerc and Max Verstappen will be on the second row just behind. Albon and Russell is an interesting third row of the grid. They know each other very, very well, but I'm sure Russell will want to dispatch Albon as quickly as possible. Yuki Tsunoda, really, really good qualifying from him as well. Gets himself into the positions where we expect him to be, and possible points on the cards for Tsunoda as well tomorrow, starting in 7th place, ahead of both RBs, Hadjar and Lawson starting 8th and 9th. Gabriel Bortoleto starts inside of the point scoring places after being handed an opportunity to get through into Q2 just because of a lap time deletion. Gabriel Bortoleto then turned that into a Q3. So that is turning up and doing the business from Gabriel Bortoleto. Very, very impressive from the Brazilian. The two Hasses, after scoring points in the sprint race earlier on today, will start on the 6th row of the grid. They're 11th and 12th, the two teammates side by side. Pierre Gasly, after a very, very disappointing sprint for him, he'll start in 13th place, 3 points away, or 3 positions away from the point scoring places, I should say. Nico Hülkenberg, after his streak of point scoring finishes in Spain, starts in 14th, so a lot of work to do there for the German if he is going to score points for the 5th race in a row. Carlos Sainz starts in 15th place. They were the 5 drivers that we lost during Q2. Lewis Hamilton was out in Q1. He'll start in 16th place, actually behind the driver he replaced at Ferrari. And another really disappointing session for the 7-time world champion. Franco Colapinto and Kimi Antonelli will start on the penultimate row of the grid, and then Alonso and Stroll right at the back of the pack. As I said, though, thank you guys so much for watching. Leave a like, subscribe, all of that good stuff. I will see you all tomorrow for the Belgian Grand Prix. I clicked the wrong button. That's the right button. I'll see you tomorrow.